Welcome to A Slice with Dice, a podcast exploring the ideas, pressures, and possibilities shaping how we learn, lead, and grow. I'm Corey Alderdice. For over 20 years, my work has lived at the intersection of gifted education, leadership development, and school culture, supporting students as they find their strengths, educators as they stretch their thinking, and schools as they build pathways that expand opportunity. Ready to dive in? Here's this week's Slice. Over the course of this summer school series, College Before College, we've spent a great deal of time discussing expansion. Expansion of access, of acceleration, of dual enrollment, concurrent credit, and early college pathways into the mainstream of American education. Now, much of that expansion has been driven by a fairly intuitive assumption. If academically capable students are given access earlier to college-level opportunities, positive outcomes should follow naturally. More students will enroll in college, more students will persist, and families will save money. In reality, educational attainment will increase. And in many respects, the research suggests that those things are true. But while working through the studies surrounding dual enrollment, I encountered a recent report from WestEd that complicated the conversation in an important way. The report examined what researchers described as the arc of dual enrollment participation, particularly among first-generation students, lower-income students, and students from historically underserved backgrounds. Now, what the report argues in essence is that educational systems often assume academic readiness and institutional readiness are the same thing. But they're not. A student may possess the intellectual ability to succeed in college coursework while still feeling profoundly unfamiliar with the systems surrounding that coursework. And as dual enrollment expands, that distinction becomes increasingly important. For decades, many accelerated learning environments disproportionately served students who already possessed substantial institutional familiarity. Their families often understood higher education. Their schools regularly produced college-bound graduates. The expectations, language, norms, and structures surrounding college attendance were already woven into the fabric of daily life. But as acceleration broadens, institutions are reaching students whose relationship with higher education may look very different. That shift is enormously important, and I'd argue overwhelmingly positive. Some of the strongest evidence surrounding dual enrollment suggests that students from rural, lower income, and historically underrepresented populations can experience especially meaningful gains when given access to advanced coursework early, because opportunity changes trajectories. But the WestEd report raises an important caution about what happens after access is granted. Educational systems are often designed around visible indicators of readiness like grades, test scores, placement benchmarks, and previous coursework. Those indicators matter, clearly, but students need academic preparation to succeed in rigorous environments, and yet the report suggests that intellectual preparation alone does not fully determine whether students experience acceleration as empowering or alienating. Because succeeding in college-level environments requires more than content mastery. It also requires familiarity with institutional expectations that are frequently invisible to the people who already possess them. Things like knowing when to ask questions, understanding how to communicate with instructors, interpreting a syllabus, managing independent deadlines, navigating unfamiliar digital systems, understanding transfer implications for those credits, and recognizing when confusion is normal rather than evidence of personal inadequacy. Students from college-going environments often absorb many of those norms gradually and indirectly long before they ever enroll in a college course. For other students, though, those expectations may feel opaque and destabilizing precisely because nobody has ever made them fully visible. That distinction matters because many acceleration policies are built primarily around structural access. If students can enroll, the assumption is often that the opportunity itself will produce momentum. The West Ed report, though, suggests that reality is much more complicated. Some students enter dual enrollment environments carrying an additional cognitive burden beyond the coursework itself. They are simultaneously trying to decode the culture of higher education while participating inside it. That challenge may not appear on transcripts or statewide dashboards, but it shapes the lived experience of acceleration in incredibly profound ways. I think this helps explain why some students who appear highly prepared academically can still struggle once they arrive in college-level settings. The issue isn't a lack of intelligence or potential. Often, it's the absence of institutional fluency, that kind of familiarity that allows students to move through systems confidently because the rules already feel legible. Now, one of the strongest sections of the report focuses on the importance of what researchers call point person models. The phrase sounds technical, but the underlying idea here is very much human. Students navigating dual enrollment successfully often benefit from a trusted adult who helps translate that institutional complexity into something more manageable and understandable. Not simply an administrator processing paperwork, not an advisor just scheduling courses, but someone capable of helping students interpret the experience itself. That kind of guidance becomes especially important because dual enrollment students occupy an unusual developmental position. They are simultaneously high school students and emerging college students. Educational systems often expect them to operate with substantial independence while still living inside the social and developmental realities of adolescence. And for some students, that transition feels relatively seamless, as we've discussed, but for others, it can produce persistent uncertainty about whether they truly belong in the environment at all. And belonging matters far more than educational systems regularly acknowledge. One of the recurring patterns across modern educational reform is the tendency to focus heavily on structural questions while underestimating the relational ones. Policymakers can mandate access, standardize pathways, fund scholarships, and create accountability systems, and again, those things do matter, but none automatically produce confidence, connection, or institutional trust for students and families alike. Those experiences emerge through relationships. They arise through adults who notice confusion before students disengage entirely. They emerge through environments where students feel permitted to ask questions without an embarrassment. And they arrive through systems intentionally designed to make hidden expectations visible rather than assuming students already understand them. I think this becomes especially important as acceleration moves from innovation to infrastructure. When dual enrollment served a relatively small number of students, institutions could rely on informal navigation and self-selection. Students who entered these environments were frequently already fluent in the culture surrounding them. But mass expansion changes that equation. As pathways broaden, educational systems inherit greater responsibility for helping students navigate those pathways successfully. Otherwise, acceleration risks reproducing the very inequalities it's often intended to reduce. And I think that may be one of the most important insights in this entire series, that access and success are not interchangeable concepts. Creating opportunity matters enormously, but opportunity alone does not guarantee students experience those opportunities as places where they can fully participate, persist, and most of all, thrive. And perhaps that is where the future of acceleration becomes less about the number of pathways educational systems create and more about the quality of the human infrastructure surrounding them. Because meaningful acceleration is not simply a scheduling innovation or a policy mechanism. It is an act of institutional translation. It requires schools and colleges willing to make unfamiliar systems understandable, navigable, and humane for students entering them for the first time, in ways that are different and even more challenging than it is for traditional first-time undergraduate students making the leap on a college campus after high school. Because if the future of college before college depends on only expanding access, well, I think the movement will eventually encounter significant limits. But if institutions remain attentive to belonging, mentorship, guidance, and the lived experience of students navigating increasingly complex systems, acceleration may yet become something larger than efficiency. It may become a genuine expansion of possibility. A Slice with Dice is a production of Aldercube. Thanks for making time to reflect with me. If you're finding value in these episodes, I hope you'll subscribe and help spread the word. Until next time, lead boldly, listen closely, and keep pushing forward. I'll see you then.